Hi everyone, it's Lauren. I hope that you're all well. Today I'm going to be talking about the books that I read in the second half of January and also something that I'm currently reading as well. So I've been having a really good first start of the year. I had a bit of a reading slump for most of last year really, just because I was getting married and other stuff was going on in my life. So it's really nice to come home in January and just get straight back into reading, and I'm really enjoying the books that I have picked up. So things are looking up. Feeling positive. The first book that I read earlier in January was Persuasion by Jane Austen. This is my penultimate Austen. I have read everything else other than Mansfield Park, so that's the one I have left to read. This is about a young woman called Anne Elliot, who is the middle of three sisters. Her father and older sister are very liberal with their money, and so it gets to a point where the family are in debt, so they have to let out their house. Her father and older sister travel down to Bath, and she goes to stay with her younger sister and her husband across the way while they're letting out this house. And the real twist in the plot is when Anne meets a young captain who she was betrothed to when she was very, very young. I think about 10 years ago it is in the book, and she was persuaded by her father and her father's friend to not marry him because he was too poor and it wasn't the right kind of person for her. And he's now come back. She is still single, and he's very well established in the Navy and he's done well for himself, but she is very, very upset by seeing him because she knows that she broke his heart all those years ago by rejecting him. And it's really, this is one of, I think, Jane Austen's books from what I've read, which is mostly focused on the manners of everybody there. Like, I've never read so much where it's about so many tiny little things which is happening in the drawing room or on walks, and it's very about people appearing to be one way and appearing to be polite and doing what is seemly, but then also trying to get their own way at the same time. And it feels a little bit less kind of sweeping, romantic and funny and silly than Pride and Prejudice, for example, or Sense and Sensibility, but it is a little bit quieter. I think Anne Elliot is a very interesting character because she's been told by her family that she's kind of worthless for many years, and she's just trying to not bother anyone really, and she's just trying to be quiet, be where she's needed, help people as she's needed, and not make a fuss and not get in anyone's way. And it's quite sad to see someone who's so beaten down about themselves, and you just want her to, what you really wish when you're reading it is that they didn't have all these social mores and that she could just speak to him and they could talk plainly about their feelings. It feels very repressed and very English, but overall it was a nice, enjoyable, easy read. Next, I read The Seven Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle, which was the winner of the first novel award for the Costa Book Awards. I have done a video talking about this in more detail, and Normal People by Sally Rooney, which was the winner of the novel award, which I will link here if you'd like to go see that. But I will say that I really, really enjoyed the reading experience of this book. The scenario in which our plot is taking place is this big English country house. A party is happening. It feels like it's set sort of in the 1930s. And Evelyn Hardcastle is going to be murdered at the end of this day. And our protagonist is waking up in a different body of a different guest, and reliving the same day. So he relives the day 8 times, and he has to try and work out who is going to murder Evelyn and solve the murder, essentially. So it's a mix between this Agatha Christie whodunit, very traditional feel, and a time-travelling element slash dystopian kind of futuristic game playing. He doesn't really know why he's there and why he's reliving this day, and there are other people who are experiencing this day in the same way as he is. So there's other people trapped within this day, within this world, who are trying to solve Evelyn's murder as well. So not only is he trying to solve a murder, but he's trying to avoid being killed by his competitors. And for me, who doesn't read a lot of crime fiction, I don't read a lot of thrillers, I was so invested in this book, and I felt like I couldn't tell what was going to happen next. It is quite complex, and I have heard from other people that I know who've read it that for a while they just couldn't understand what was going on. So, you know, there's a lot of different twists and turns in there. But for me, I felt like the big twists when we found out what was really going on, I felt like they really paid off. There's a lot to be said for the intricacies of this plot and the characters that it includes in it, but I don't want to say too much in the video because I think I would spoil it for you going in. But if anybody has read it, I'm very happy to talk more about what I thought about the different characters and the different twists, etc. in the comments below. Just put a little note saying that you've got a spoiler in there just in case. And the last book that I finished in January was The Girl in the Tower by Catherine Arden, which is the second book in the Winter Night trilogy. The first one is The Bear and the Nightingale, which I read last October and really enjoyed. This is set in a medieval magical landscape of what will become Russia, and our protagonist is Vazia, who is a young girl who is a granddaughter of a witch, and she can see all of the folklore magical tales which you have in Russian legends. She can see them, and the first book we're really establishing her as a character and understanding where she fits in her link to the magical old realm as opposed to Christianity, which is coming through and destroying all of the old beliefs and old values. And I did really enjoy that first book, but this one I absolutely loved, because I think The Bear and the Nightingale was quite establish-y. It was letting us know who everybody was, it was setting the scene, and The Girl in the Tower is just action, and I loved it. And Vazia is emancipated, she knows who she is, she wants to get out of her role as a young woman who's just destined to either become a wife or join a convent, and she wants something more for her life. And I really enjoyed this sort of new turn in her story. I obviously don't want to say too much about it in case you haven't read The Bear and the Nightingale, but I really feel like I am on this train now after reading this one. I know that there's a lot of hype about this whole trilogy and the third one, The Winter of the Witch, which has just come out. So after reading The Bear and the Nightingale, I was enjoying it, but I wasn't really in there with the hype. And now after reading this, I feel like, yes, yep, I understand why everyone loves it, and I agree. And finally, I am currently reading Pachinko by Min-Jin Lee, and I'm about, I want to say, a third of the way through, so I can't comment on the plot very much yet, but it's about Korea, South Korea, and a family history, really, a family story. We seem to be following the life of Sunja, who is a young girl who is the daughter of a couple that run a boarding house in South Korea, and it's around the time when South Korea was annexed by Japan. So we're kind of following her story from childhood, a little bit of the history of her parents as well, and now she's on her way into life and she's going over to Japan. So I think there's going to be a lot more of this story, and we're going to jump far through history. But where I am currently in the book, I don't think it's a fair representation of what the plot is going to be later on. However, I'm really, really enjoying it, and I know nothing about South Korean history, or actually I should say Korea, because we're looking in the 30s and there isn't a North and South to Korea at the point where I'm reading this book. So it's actually fascinating learning more about this time in the world and leading up to where we're going to get towards World War II, I'm presuming, because being a European-centred person, we don't really learn very much about the Japanese side of World War II. So I'm looking forward to reading a little bit more and seeing how history unfolds, and I'm really enjoying the characters as well. So that's to be continued. I'll talk about it more when I finish it in my next wrap up. So let me know in the comments what you've been reading and enjoying so far this year, and how you're feeling about your reading going forward into the new year. And as always, if you've read any of these books that I've featured in this video, I would love to hear your thoughts on those as well. And I'll see you next time. Bye!